have you back. This is Environmental Intelligence, episode 45, for June 15th, 2026. Your Environmental Intelligence briefing, starting the week with the environmental regulatory developments that matter for your practice. Newfoundland advances 25-year fish sauce site remediation requiring 200 dump truck trips in St. Mary's. A long-standing organic waste remediation project in Newfoundland moves toward resolution, while the Canada Gazette publishes its weekly federal notices. British Columbia reports strong uptake for its rural community immigration pilot, alongside ongoing land stewardship work that ties directly to wildfire risk reduction. Practitioners should scan the Gazette this week for any Part 1 notices affecting SEPA or Fisheries Act instruments. If you only note one thing today for your compliance calendar, confirm whether any SEPA or impact assessment notices in the June 13th Federal Gazette affect active federal permits, with the next issue due June 20. Newfoundland is executing removal of 110 vats of fish sauce accumulated over 25 years at a former plant in St. Mary's. The operation will require roughly 200 standard dump truck loads to clear the material. This constitutes a discrete contaminated site remediation under provincial authority, with no federal trigger identified in the reporting. Local officials have now secured the transport and disposal pathway after prolonged delays. Site owners and consultants handling similar high-strength organic wastes in Atlantic Canada should review transport manifests and disposal facility acceptance criteria before summer mobilization. Next milestone is completion of the 200 trip sequence and confirmation of post-removal verification sampling. The Canada Gazette Part 1 for June 13 contains the standard index plus any required extra additions. No specific new instruments are summarized in the feed, but the publication remains the official channel for SEPA notices, Fisheries Act orders, and federal impact assessment updates. Practitioners should download the full PDF set to check for any last-minute comment periods or coming into force dates. British Columbia reports high demand for the federal-provincial pilot that lets small communities recommend skilled workers for permanent residency in targeted sectors. Environmental consulting and remediation contractors operating in rural BC should note potential labor pool expansion for field and laboratory roles. Researchers estimate underground fungal networks span 110 quadrillion kilometers and move approximately 4 billion tons of carbon dioxide into soils annually. The mapping provides baseline data relevant to soil carbon accounting under provincial contaminated sites frameworks that credit natural attenuation or enhanced bioremediation. A new multi-site catalyst architecture separates reaction steps, eliminating the historic speed efficiency trade-off and delivering roughly 3 times the methanol output of commercial benchmarks. The advance may inform future ex situ treatment options for captured CO2 streams at industrial sites regulated under Alberta EPEA or federal output-based pricing. Large-scale data center development continues to drive electricity, water, and land demand while creating localized heat island effects. Environmental consultants preparing environmental assessments or energy intensity studies for similar facilities in British Columbia should update baseline modeling to reflect these cumulative loads. XAXETENEIU Sacred Land Society reports measurable wildfire risk reduction and improved forest health through active stewardship. The work aligns with provincial expectations for cultural and ecological restoration on brownfield or interface sites. Now, speaking of the Newfoundland fish sauce removal, here's something I wish someone had told me early in my career. You arrive at a former fish processing facility on the Newfoundland coast where 110 vats of concentrated fish sauce have sat for 25 years. The Phase 2 shows elevated BOD, ammonia, and sulfide in shallow groundwater, but the nearest receptor is a small harbor 300 meters away. The science here is straightforward. Anaerobic decomposition of proteins generates volatile fatty acids and hydrogen sulfide that migrate rapidly in sandy or fractured bedrock aquifers, typical of Atlantic Canada. In the field, you notice that standard low-flow sampling underestimates peak concentrations because the plume is density stratified. The experienced practitioner therefore installs multi-level wells screened at 1 meter intervals and collects both filtered and unfiltered samples for sulfide and ammonia to capture the true mass flux. Regulatory submissions under the Newfoundland and Labrador Environmental Protection Act must demonstrate that post-removal verification meets the same risk-based criteria used for petroleum hydrocarbons, even though no CSR protocol directly addresses this waste stream. The most common mistake is assuming that once the vats are hauled away, the source is eliminated. Residual pooled liquid and stained soil beneath the vats continue to release contaminants for months, so the fix is to require a minimum 30-day post-excavation monitoring period, with triggers for additional excavation or in situ oxidation before issuing a closure letter. If you're working on high BOD organic wastes in Atlantic Canada, you'll want to update Phase 2 sampling protocols to include multi-level wells and sulfide speciation. Brief remediation contractors on the 200-truck removal sequence completed in St. Mary's, and confirm disposal facility acceptance criteria for similar wastes. Review BC land stewardship case studies for wildfire interface risk reduction credits that may apply to current contaminated sites projects. Mark your calendar for the next Canada Gazette Part 1 issue expected June 20. The St. Mary's NL fish sauce removal sequence remains ongoing under Newfoundland and Labrador Authority. BC rural community immigration pilot intake continues through the current period. Tomorrow, watch for the full details on any new SEPA instruments in the June 20 Gazette. That's environmental intelligence for today. If this briefing is useful to your practice, share it with a colleague and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back with the next briefing. Have a productive day, and before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give Models and Agents a listen, your daily briefing on AI models and agents. You can explore the whole lineup at neuranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.